Where's the bar? So good. So we're on top of the boat, and this is what the company name is of the boat company that takes the tours on the harbor and overseeing the city. This is what the dock looks like right now. Look how beautiful that is, right on the city port. We'll see more once it takes off, but I think it's pretty cool where you see the cruise ship over there, which I'm excited to see once we pass it. So I can't wait for that. So sweet.
Welcome aboard, everybody, to the Salish Explorer and the second deck refreshment bar. One, just to let you know it's here, open and ready for you. And two, to give you an idea of some of the things we have going on down here. We pride ourselves on doing everything about as local as possible. So all of our beers, our wines, even a lot of our liquor. Our tour guide narrator here for our 1 hour harbor tour. Kind of making a big old loop here around the bay. Just a teeny bit about me. I just kind of grown up in the area for the last like 15 or so years, kind of went away to school, came back, and love the city so much. But I'm kind of curious, anyone else on top here with me a local? Can you show hands? All right, we got one fact checker. We love that.
We're all tourists.
Anybody else visiting here for the first time? Show hands. Great, a lot of first timers. Well, welcome. Kind of our usual weather this time of year. Never really guess what it's going to be, but hopefully the sun stays out for us. It's supposed to. But we're definitely going to enjoy our trip around the bay here. One of the first things I kind of like to point out to kind of get our tour started is just looking back where we just came from. So we just came out Pier 55 there on the right-hand side. And you'll notice right next door is Pier 56. We've got a great number system here with our piers. The thing is, we haven't always had that system. So prior to World War II, it was actually a bunch of different names and numbers. So it could get kind of confusing coming from the water side, kind of figure out where you were along our piers. It actually was during World War II when the Army was in town. They went ahead and completely redid our little number system. So now it makes sense. So as we go along, you can kind of keep track of where we are based on those numbers. One other thing you're going to notice here about our historic piers is they come off at an angle. They're not coming straight off the waterfront there. Kind of two major reasons for that, but one being Alaskan Way there used to be known as Railroad Avenue, and each of these piers were working piers and they were accessed by rail car. It's a little hard to turn a rail car in a 90-degree angle, so the angle you see here made it a lot easier to pull those rail cars all the way up to the end of these piers so they could load and unload goods off vessels that would come to the end of them here. So as we go along, you'll notice they are all kind of at that angle. The other major reason for the angle here is we have actually a pretty quick drop off right here. So in order to pull them out as far out as they need to, coming at an angle made it to those pilings down there can actually reach to the bottom of the water. We'll actually see a good example of that at another pier along our tour here that is not at an angle. But I'll be sure to point that one out to us. So this first thing worth pointing out is going to be this blue building with the big white windows, green trim, says Seattle Aquarium on it, really big letters. It's the Seattle Aquarium. It opened in 1976 as a way to kind of show off our animals and creatures here of the Puget Sound. They really focus on research, especially having to do with how to keep our waters clean and healthy and keep our animals happy. A great example, one of their exhibits there is actually going to be the giant Pacific octopus. And what's really cool about that is the octopus that lives there in the aquarium only lives there for part of its life. What they'll do is they'll get a permit and pull a young octopus out of the sound here. The octopus will then live there about 6 months, a year, basically once it hits maturity. When it does, they actually will release the octopus back to where they got it from. So it allows us to see it and enjoy it there in the exhibit, but also allows the octopus to live a full life, adding to our wild populations as well. Next to the aquarium there, you're going to see a large kind of building that's being constructed. A lot of you have maybe noticed our waterfront is going under a big facelift. What's really cool about this space is an extension of the aquarium. It's going to be called the Ocean Pavilion. It's going to have a large shark tank and such in it, but it's also doubling as a way to connect Pike Place Market to the waterfront. The easiest way to spot Pike Place Market consumers, kind of cut out that middleman. That first day, about 1,000 people showed up with about 10 vendors. So doing the math, they ran out of everything basically by lunchtime. But luckily more people kind of came together and cemented the market as the legacy it is today. And of course, giant cruise ship coming up right across here for us. It is cruise season officially now in Seattle. Is anybody else heading out on the cruise today? Oh, quite a good number of you. Sweet, that's amazing. But yes, cruise season just got started. Starts in late April and will run all the way through to early fall. And that's because our cruises here are heading up to Alaska. Don't really want to head up to Alaska in the winter. We're just now hitting that nice weather. It is always nice to wave a hello to any vessels, anybody who waves to us. Just remember, always one hand though. So if you wave with two, that means we're in distress. And we're all doing all right. This terminal, though, for this cruise ship is going to be our first cruise ship that our cruise terminal we got here in the year 2000. So kind of prior to building that, we didn't actually have a very large cruise industry here in Seattle. They were hoping by building it, we kind of could create that industry here and maybe rival that of Vancouver. I would say successful, because not only do we have this cruise ship terminal, we are going to have one a little further down as well. So 2 different terminals kind of going through here in Seattle. I'll save a little bit more of my cruise ship information though for when we're at that other terminal. That's because one of my favorite buildings is actually coming up here. It's going to be this gray building with the geometric windows, the big red neon E on top. This is the Edgewater Hotel. It's our only hotel that's actually built along the piers here, because it was built in 1964 and hopes to house some of the millions of people coming to the city for the World's Fair that was happening that year. But the thing is, building on a pier ended up being a lot more difficult than anybody kind of anticipated. The Edgewater was not able to open in time for the fair. It actually opened 2 weeks after the fair closed, and mind you, that fair was 6 months long, so a lot of delays there at the Edgewater. However, they tried to think of a way to get people to stay here at their hotel, and they leaned into the idea of being right on the water and opened a bait and tackle shop in their lobby, letting guests actually fish from their hotel room windows. Now, that sounds super cool. So you have a fish in your hotel room. Now what? Some people put a bathtub with salt and water. It's not exactly how that kind of works. But some people are also known to gut the fish also in their rooms as well. So housekeeping was okay when that ended in 1980. So can no longer fish from your hotel room there at the Edgewater. But they do have another really cool claim to fame that happened in 1964 when the Beatles came to town. It was their first North American tour, and Seattle was like second or third stop, so pretty early in on their tour. And no other hotel wanted to take them in. Security risk was super big, Beatlemania was running strong, the fans were rabid. But the manager of the Edgewater said, we'll take them. It's going to be great publicity, and we really only have to secure one side. The publicity thing ended up proving correct because actually a very famous image made it into Life magazine of the Fab Four fishing out of their hotel room window there at the Edgewater. Kind of cemented as a rock star hotel how different rock stars through the years kind of stayed there, especially through the 70s and such. But you can still stay in the same room the Beatles stayed in. I'll warn you though, nothing's gonna be original to the Beatles anymore. Not necessarily because they've done renovations, but it's because the minute the Beatles checked out, they actually went in and took all the furniture and moved into different rooms in the hotel so fans wouldn't want to steal the furniture. But they also ripped up the carpet and sold carpet squares in a department store downtown for charity. There's even a rumor that a toilet seat was sold to one of the fans. So not original to them anymore, but they do play homage to them in that room, kind of to that stay. As we kind of clear this last pier here in these buildings, we're gonna get a beautiful view of the Space Needle. We actually have a seaplane also kind of taken off there. Very cliche Seattle here for you. But definitely feel free to grab those images of the Space Needle here because it is going to be our closest, most unobstructed view we will get in on our tour. Throughout the tour, feel free to maneuver around the vessel. You are not stuck to your seat. But my biggest thing is just watch your step. We are in a moving vessel after all, so just watch where you're walking when you're walking around. I'll save my facts though for the Space Needle, though when we're out in the middle of the bay, it's a little easier to talk about it in the scale of our entire skyline. But just below the Space Needle there, you're gonna see a large, beautiful park area with some sculptures kind of popping up. This is Olympic Sculpture Park. It's an extension of our art museum. Our art museum is pretty easy to remember. It's just called SAM, Seattle Art Museum. It's actually up on First and University. But what's really cool about this space here is it is a free space. You actually do not need to pay to come view these sculptures and enjoy this beautiful area. My favorite sculpture to kind of point out here is going to be that red metal kind of pointy sculpture. That is called the Eagle, and it's by Alexander Calder. If you are a modern art fan, you may recognize that name. It's pretty well known for kinetic sculpture in public pieces, but it's an abstract rendering of an eagle kind of either taking off or landing. It's a little hard to tell. However, we do have another eagle that's a little easier to spot, and that's going to be the eagle on top of this globe here on this blue glassy building. This was once home to the Seattle Post-Intelligencer. It's one of our first newspapers here in Seattle. But they are no longer in the space, but the globe still stands kind of marking it there. The globe itself was actually a winning design. They put out a contest in the 1940s looking for a new logo and image for the Post-Intelligencer, and that was the winning one. The globe itself, those words on it say it's in the PI, and that was the motto for the newspaper, and they put out all of their newspapers they would print. It used to light up, it used to rotate. Unfortunately, it does not do either at the moment. However, MoHi, our Museum of History and Industry, has talked about actually completely refurbishing the globe and putting it into a space where it can shine in its kind of formal glory. But really no decisions have been made yet, so we're just kind of waiting for that project to maybe take place. But in the meantime, we get to enjoy it here along the water. But moving our eye line up the hill there, you're going to see 3 broadcast towers marking a neighborhood of Queen Anne. Now, what's cool about the neighborhood of Queen Anne is 2 TV doctors are set to have lived up there. One home, they used an actual residence to use the exterior shots for the TV show, and the other one, not quite up there. The one who's not quite up there is Dr. Fraser Crane from the TV show Frasier. It's a spin-off of Cheers. He was set to live in a high-rise condo building up on Queen Anne Hill. Thing is, doesn't exist. Frasier was really only filmed on set. They really only did 1 episode here in the city, so not as quite as true to life there. And if you do watch the show, every time they show the skyline or the Space Needle, you'll notice the elevators never move. So it's just kind of an image they use. Now the other TV doctor who they use an actual residence is Dr. Meredith Grey from Grey's Anatomy. If you are familiar with the show, that first season, there's a home that all the residents lived in. They actually use a home up there in Queen Anne for those exterior shots. The home is still up there and you're all more than welcome to go and take photos of it, but be respectful, it is a private residence. Grey's Anatomy though did a lot more filming here in the city. They actually would film over at the Space Needle, especially at the base of the Space Needle. That's where one of our news broadcasts has a helicopter landing spot. So anytime they had a helicopter emergency, they would actually use that spot there. And they also would film out on the Washington State ferries. So a little more true to life there with Grey's Anatomy, a lot more filming here in the city, especially for those earlier seasons. But moving our eyesight back down to the water here, you're going to see these large nets kind of strewn out. These are called salmon net pens, because what's inside those little pens there there are little baby fingerling salmon. The idea is to help raise these salmon to add to our wild population kind of towards the end of summer there. We actually do have a research vessel there today. Usually they are feeding the salmon, but also kind of keeping an eye on everything kind of going on here. This is put on by two tribes here in Seattle, the Muckleshoot and Suquamish tribes. Our tribes rely a lot on that salmon fishing, both for culture and also for other things within their community. So the idea is with this salmon, they'll help raise it and add to that wild population. And when it comes time to fish, they'll try to catch these guys with some of the wild ones, just to kind of add to those populations here in our sound, because they are very important to our ecosystem. A lot of seaplanes kind of taking off today. Those seaplanes are all taking off the other side of the hill. Here is Lake Union. So they'll all land and take off from there. So we'll probably see them over our heads a few times throughout the tour here, but lots of seaplanes today. But now we've come up to this large vessel here on the right-hand side. This vessel is called a bulk carrier. And what that means is you're going to notice there's not really any cargo on top of the vessel. That's because all the cargo that's getting loaded into this vessel is actually going to be loaded below the deck. Now the thing about this vessel, as I can tell you, it's pretty empty. And the way I can do that without actually knowing what's all inside is if you see, there's two different colors of red on this vessel. There's one on the bottom that's a little bit more orangey, more of a rusty red color. So that is how we decide how full it is. What will happen is as they fill this vessel up, we will see less and less of that color because this boat will actually drop more and more into the water with the weight of the cargo. Now the cargo that they're filling up with it, if you see these large silos kind of coming into view, it's cattle grade grain. So that grain is going to be grown pretty much mostly in the Midwest. We do have some small amounts that will come from eastern Washington. It's more of our dry agricultural side of the state. But most of it is actually grown in the Midwest, put on a train, and then shipped here out of this port. Those grain terminals that I pointed out, those silos hold about 4 million bushels of that grain, about 40 to 50 pounds there. So about 40 to 50 pounds is a bushel of grain, so it kind of gives you an idea of the scale there. When they are loading up that grain, though, they'll wait for kind of a clear day. They're going to avoid really a lot of rain in the air, a lot of moisture, and that's because grain with moisture, it can rot or get moldy. So they wait for what they call a fair weather day to actually load up those vessels. Now this large office space kind of next to those silos here is home to Expedia travel partners. A lot of different tech companies do call Seattle home here. Expedia did get started here. Of course, Microsoft and Amazon are some others that come to mind. But over in South Lake Union, one of our neighborhoods here, we've got a big hub of tech companies, including Apple and Google as well. So a lot of tech companies call Seattle home. Expedia here, though, gets a beautiful view from their office. These next two piers coming into view, though, are going to be Pier 90 and Pier 91. They are part of what is called Smith Cove. So Pier 90 is the first one that's going to come into view here. Has a lot of fishing vessels kind of flanking it. And that's because this pier is used as part of our fishing industry. Now, most of the fishing is not done here in Seattle. It's going to be all done mostly up in Alaska and brought down here. So what's actually happening in these beige buildings is called cold storage or processing of that fishing catch as it comes down here. One of the major fish that we see come through here is called Alaskan pollock. Now, what's really funny about Alaskan pollock is you probably have had it and maybe don't even realize it. It's a white, mild, flaky fish. So they use it for things like fish sticks, imitation crab, a fillet of fish. Anything that was a white fish and didn't say what kind of white fish was probably Alaskan pollock. So now we're coming across, of course, our second cruise terminal. You see we have a cruise ship on either side of this terminal. What's cool about this one is Pier 91. It's a little bit newer. And when these cruise ships are here in this port, they can actually plug into our city grid. It's called shore power. And what that means is while they are here, they can actually turn off their generators. So it kind of creates a little bit greener way to go about our cruising industry. These cruise ships themselves probably came in about 5 a.m. They'll come here and the clock starts the minute they hit the dock. About 12 hours is about as fast as they will need to be out of here. So they're going to unload their previous guests. They're going to get all kinds of things like fuel, which is actually what's happening with this Eurodam boat. You can see that black barge kind of put up next to it. That's a fueling. It's a bulk or here,